Hello, it's me, R.A. Spratt. I've got a new book coming out, The Epically Awesome Odyssey, as told by Nanny Piggins, which means I've got some events coming up. I'm going to be doing a book launch at my hometown in Bowral on the 23rd of May, and I'm also going to be travelling down to Melbourne. The Wheeler Centre has invited me for their festival, and I'm going to be doing two shows there, one at Kyneton on the 7th of July and another at the Capitol Theatre in central Melbourne on the 8th of July. So that's in the school holidays. So if you want to see me at any of those three events, jump online and get a ticket. I'll put links in the show notes here, or you can go to my website, rasprat.com, and click on the live shows tab in the banner, and all the details will be there. Okay, now let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, R.A. Spratt. Well, it's been a really busy week here this week, but the exciting thing is today I got in the post a copy of my new book that's coming out in June, which is Epically Awesome Odyssey as told by Nanny Piggins, which is, of course, based on stories I've told on this podcast. It's always real, like this is like my 34th or 35th book now, but it's always really exciting when you finally actually get a physical copy of the book in your hands, because up until that point, it's sort of in your imagination or in like a Word document on your computer. But then when it's actually a real physical thing, it's wonderful. It's magical. And the cover on this book is absolutely beautiful, done by Lucinda Gifford. So it was a really exciting morning this morning when that came in the post. All right. Well, let's just get into today's story. So, as promised, I got a haircut. I got a haircut during the week. And that made me think of Samson from Samson and Delilah. So this week I am going to do the story of Samson and Delilah as told by Nanny Piggins. Did anything interesting happen at school today? Asked Nanny Piggins as the children tucked into their afternoon tea of chocolate chip cookies and hot chocolate. Samson Wallace got a haircut, said Derek. Really? Said Nanny Piggins. Had he recently acquired super strength? Was someone trying to disempower him? Nah, Nanny Ann just did it because he scratched his head, said Derek. I don't follow, said Nanny Piggins. Well, Nanny Ann hates head lice, explained Derek. She hates all insects, said Samantha. She hates all creatures, said Michael. Including children, agreed Nanny Piggins, which is odd for someone whose chosen profession is childcare. Anyway, she saw Samson scratch his head, and just in case it wasn't it, said Derek, she shaved his head. Completely shaved? Asked Nanny Piggins. Completely, said Derek. It's shiny now, agreed Michael. That poor boy, said Nanny Piggins. Oh, he doesn't mind, said Derek. He says it's easier to wash his hair now, he doesn't have any. And Nanny Ann had very strict hair washing procedures, so it's going to save him an hour a night. But shaving a child's head when they have head lice is so 19th century, said Nanny Piggins. There are shampoos that solve the problem easily and allow you to retain your coiffure. Coiffure is French for hairdo. Nanny Ann knows that, said Samantha, but she believes it's important to send a message to the rest of the nits by taking decisive action. Also, Samson didn't have nits, said Derek. He just got some glue on his head during art class and was trying to get it off. So she wasn't trying to make him weak and powerless like the original Samson, asked Nanny Piggins. Why? What happened to the original Samson? Asked Michael. Who was the original Samson? Asked Derek. He was a hero from the ancient Canaan story days, said Nanny Piggins, and he was famous for having a haircut that went horribly wrong. Let me guess, said Samantha, and Samson was a woman and a pig and a distant relative of yours. Don't be ridiculous, said Nanny Piggins. Samson was a human, although, now you mention it, I am distantly related to his wife, Delilah, and she was the instigator of the haircut. You'd better tell us the whole story, said Derek. All right, I will, said Nanny Piggins, and you'd better get Boris. This story features honey, so he's going to enjoy it, especially if I make honey snap biscuits. Once the children had fetched Boris from his yoga lessons at the park, and Nanny Piggins had baked 6 dozen honey biscuits, a dozen each plus an extra dozen for the sad bits, she began her tale. Well, it all happened 3,000 years ago in the ancient Canaan story days, when God got very cross with the Canaanites for being naughty. So, to punish them, he sent the Philistines to bully them. Who were the Philistines? Asked Michael. The Philistines were people who had emigrated from the island of Crete, said Nanny Piggins. I thought Crete was in the ancient Greek mythology days, said Derek. Yes, it was, said Nanny Piggins. Crete is where they had the labyrinth with the Minotaur. There was a lot going on in the ancient mythology days, and all these places, Greece, Egypt, Crete and Canaan, were all on the Mediterranean, so they were all next-door neighbours. How confusing, said Michael. Try not to think about it too much. When we get to the lion and the haircut, it'll be easier to follow. OK, said Michael. Right, so after the Philistines had been pushing the Canaanites around for a while, God felt bad about that too, so he decided to send them a hero. Cool, said Derek. Eventually, yes, agreed Nanny Piggins, but he decided to send the hero in the form of a baby called Samson. How is a baby going to be a hero? Asked Samantha. No one was sure at first, said Nanny Piggins. The angel who spoke to the baby's parents wasn't overly chatty. Plus, everyone likes babies, so they were too busy saying, "Ooh, what a gorgeous baby," and counting its toes and pretending to steal its nose to ask follow-up questions. The angel did, however, set out some ground rules. He said that this baby would be a great hero, but only if he never got his hair cut. Why? Asked Samantha. I don't know, said Nanny Piggins, but that was the deal. The baby would get superpowers if it didn't get its hair cut. What sort of superpower? Asked Michael. X-ray vision, super speed, the ability to leap tall buildings in a single bound? They didn't have tall buildings back then, said Derek. Yes, they did. In Egypt they had the pyramids, said Samantha. Did he have the ability to leap pyramids in a single bound? Asked Michael. No. Samson's superpower was strength, said Nanny Piggins. You couldn't really tell at first because he was a baby, but as he grew older, Samson got stronger. But still, no one realised quite how strong, not even Samson himself, until one day when he was walking along and suddenly he was attacked by a lion. Gosh, how mean, said Boris. Why did the lion attack him? Did he have a honey sandwich in his pocket? Nobody knows, said Nanny Piggins, because, quick as a wink, Samson punched the lion and it dropped dead. Oh, this is a dreadful story, said Boris. That poor lion. It was trying to eat him, said Derek. How do you know that? Asked Boris. The lion could have been leaping out to ask for directions to the nearest bus stop. The children decided not to argue. Boris, being a 10-foot-tall Kodiak bear, was very sensitive about people who misidentified large animals as terrifying wild beasts out to kill them. When he grew up, Samson fell in love and decided to get married. Well, that's nice, said Samantha. But his betrothed was a Philistine, said Nanny Piggins. She was from the tribe Samson's people had been warring against. But weddings do bring people together, so everybody hoped it would go well. But it didn't, because at the wedding, Samson told a riddle. What's so bad about that? Asked Michael. Nobody likes riddles, said Nanny Piggins. When you go to a wedding, you want a nice meal, some dancing, a lot of cake, and you don't want to be asked tricky questions that you have to stop and think about. It's almost as bad as taking an exam. What was the riddle? Asked Samantha. Well, you see, on the way to his own wedding, Samson had come across the skeleton of the lion he had killed many years earlier, and bees had built a hive inside the bones. Oh, I'm so conflicted, said Boris. That sounds both gross and delicious. Samson fancied a snack, so he reached in and grabbed a handful of honey and ate it, said Nanny Piggins. Didn't the bee sting him? Asked Derek. The story doesn't say, said Nanny Piggins. I presume he was too strong to notice. Anyway, that gave Samson the idea for the riddle, which was, out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. Huh? Said Michael. Yes, that's what the groomsmen thought too. They couldn't figure it out, so they begged Samson's new wife to tell them the answer. Samson's wife, being sensible, thought riddles were silly and her wedding day should be about her and how fabulous she looked, so she told them the answer. When the groomsmen went to Samson with the correct solution, honey from a lion, Samson immediately knew that his wife had betrayed him. But it was just a riddle, said Samantha. Yes, but Samson was famous for his strength, not his common sense, said Nanny Piggins. He threw a tantrum and called the whole wedding off. "That's not very romantic," said Samantha. "No. Then there was a series of very nasty fights," said Nanny Piggins, "which I won't describe because if he hears them, Boris won't sleep for a week. But suffice it to say, the fights got worse and worse, until Samson pretended to let the Philistines capture him by binding him with ropes. Then, as soon as they took him back to their headquarters, he snapped the ropes with his super strength and killed 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey." "But where did he get the jawbone from?" asked Samantha. "Apparently it was the nearest thing to hand," said Nanny Piggins. "So let that be a lesson to you. If you do ever kidnap an incredibly strong man, do not leave the jawbone of a donkey lying about in your living room." After that, the Philistines decided to try a new tactic. Fighting with Samson did not work because he was so strong, so they decided to try something completely different. Love. "They were kind to Samson?" asked Samantha. "No," said Nanny Piggins, "not quite. You see, it just so happened that there was a Philistine woman who was so staggeringly beautiful that any man who saw her fell hopelessly in love." "Oh, okay, I get it. And she was your relative," said Derek. "Indeed," said Nanny Piggins. "Delilah. Full name, Delilah Piggins. She was stunningly gorgeous, but the most gorgeous thing about her was not her beauty." "What?" said Michael. "Oh, no, lots of women, even human women, are beautiful," said Nanny Piggins. "Delilah had something more, a special quality." "Charisma?" asked Derek. "A kind heart?" asked Samantha. "No, better. Delilah was really, really good at baking cakes," said Nanny Piggins. "The Philistines knew no man could resist the beauty of her cakes. So they asked Delilah to win over Samson with her cakes and discover the secret to his super strength. Delilah was at first reluctant. "I don't know," said Delilah. "I don't like to use my cakes for political manipulation. I believe good cake should be freely available to people of all faiths and nationalities, regardless of their circumstances, and that it is only through the enjoyment of cake that we can bring all people together and create world peace." "We'll pay you 1,100 silver pieces to do it," said the Philistine leader. Oh, Delilah was tempted. That would buy a lot of cake ingredients. "But no, I don't want to do something so dreadful." "He is a man who cancelled his own wedding," said the leader, and before the cake had been served. "Oh, no! The beast!" said Delilah. "Fine, I'll do it." So Delilah went to find Samson, and she took her 3 finest cakes with her. As soon as Samson saw Delilah's cakes, he fell in love. "But did he fall in love with her?" asked Samantha. "Of course," said Nanny Piggins. "She was the one who made them." "Oh, Delilah, I would do anything to have just one bite of your lemon drizzle cake," said Samson. "I will give you the whole cake," said Delilah. "You will," said Samson, "but only if you tell me the secret to your great strength." "Oh, of course," said Samson. "The secret to my strength is bowstrings. If you tie me up with bowstrings, I lose all my strength and you can take me captive. Now give me the cake." "Fine," said Delilah. She handed over the cake. Samson guzzled the whole lot and then immediately fell into a deep, contented sleep. "Cake always makes me sleepy too," said Boris, "especially if I eat 3 or 4 times my own body weight of cake." Boris weighed 700 kilograms, so this was not surprising. Really, when he ate over 2,000 kilograms of cake, it was a miracle Boris didn't slip into a coma. While Samson slept, Delilah quickly fetched some bowstrings and tied him up so she could hand him over to the Philistine leaders. But when Samson awoke, he stretched, and the bowstrings instantly snapped. "You great big fibber," said Delilah. "Bowstrings didn't stop your strength at all." Samson laughed. "Ha! You didn't expect me to tell you how to best me, did you?" "Fine," said Delilah. "Keep your secret. I don't want to know anyway. I'll just eat this delicious Black Forest cherry cake myself." She took out a fabulous, chocolatey, creamy cherry cake and raised it to her lips. "No!" cried Samson. "You must give me some." "Not unless you tell me the secret to your strength," said Delilah. All right, said Samson. "It's to do with, my hair. You must, weave it into a loom. Then I will be powerless." "Really?" asked Delilah. "Oh, yes. I'm 100% telling the truth this time." So Delilah handed over the Black Forest cherry cake. Samson gobbled it down and fell into another deep sleep. And immediately Delilah set to work, weaving his hair into a loom. She was just about to get the Philistines to come and take him away when Samson woke up, stretched, shook his head, and easily smashed the loom into 1,000 pieces. "Oh, you rotter!" accused Delilah. "That loom did not diminish your super strength at all." Samson laughed. "Ha ha! You didn't think I would give away my secret so easily, did you?" "Fine," said Delilah. "If you can't trust me, so be it. I'll just have to eat my last cake myself." "Suits me," said Samson. "I should be cutting back on carbs anyway." But when Samson saw the cake, as Delilah took it out of its cake box and raised it towards her open mouth, it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Was it a sponge cake?" asked Michael. "A Madeira cake?" asked Derek. "A cheesecake?" guessed Samantha. "No, it was the single greatest cake that had ever been made," said Nanny Piggins. "Well, at that time. Obviously, I make better cakes on a daily basis now. But 3,000 years ago, this cake was the finest work of cake-based art ever made by man." "But Delilah was a pig," Samantha reminded her. "Yes," said Nanny Piggins, "because no man was capable of making the finest cake made by man. A pig had to do it, for Delilah had made the world's first Octo-Choc chocolate cake. A cake combining 8 different types of chocolate. There was chocolate cake with chocolate icing, chocolate sprinkles, chocolate filling, chocolate ice cream on the side, a block of chocolate on the top, a block of chocolate on the bottom, and chocolate reinforcement rods all through the middle to help it retain its chocolatey structure. In short, it was magnificent. Samson didn't even wait for her to ask a question. He just told her what she wanted to know. "My hair! My hair! If you chop it off, I lose my power," he yelled. "Now please, give me your beautiful cake." Delilah handed it over. Samson gobbled it down and fell into another, even more contented sleep. And while he slept, he got his first ever haircut, a buzz cut. He was completely bald. So when he woke up, Samson was as weak as a kitten who had run a marathon and then stayed up all night watching scary movies, which is very weak indeed. The Philistines easily took him captive. "Oh, poor Samson," said Samantha. "They weren't too mean, were they?" "Oh, yes, they were. But remember, Samson had killed a lot of Philistines, so they were very cross," said Nanny Piggins. "They poked Samson in the eyes and set him to work in their mill, grinding grain by pushing a huge, heavy millstone around in circles." "But he wasn't super strong anymore," said Derek. "Would that have worked?" "Derek Green, how many times have I told you not to analyse the plot of stories? Reality barely makes sense, so why should stories be expected to?" "Oh, yes, of course, Nanny Piggins. I don't know what I was thinking. Please continue," said Derek. The Philistines were very proud of themselves and their cleverness capturing Samson. And all their Philistine friends wanted to see what the former hero looked like, so they travelled from across the region to take a look. It took weeks for them to get there, but when they did, the Philistines got everyone together in their temple and brought in Samson to show him off. Now, Samson had been working at the mill for several months by this stage, and he was weary. He asked to be allowed to sit down and lean against a pillar. Everyone was enjoying the party, so they just said, "Oh, sure." But in the months that he'd been pushing the heavy grindstone, Samson's hair had grown back, and as he leant back and bumped his shoulder into the pillar, the stone moved. Samson realised he had regained his super strength. So he reached around and pushed the pillar as hard as he could. And it was a load-bearing pillar, so the whole roof fell down, and every single person at the party was killed. The end. Time for bed. "What? You can't end the story like that," said Derek. "It's very sad," said Samantha. "Well, I didn't make it up," said Nanny Piggins. "It's from the Ancient Mythology Days." "But what happened to Delilah?" asked Michael. "Did the roof fall on her too?" "No, of course not. Being so beautiful, Delilah never attended parties, because when she did, she was constantly getting marriage proposals. No, she stayed home and worked on her cake research. She spent the rest of her days exploring the boundaries of physics and chemistry by attempting to construct the world's first Nonna chocolate cake, which is a cake combining 9 types of chocolate." "Did she ever do it?" asked Samantha. "Well, that is a story for another day," said Nanny Piggins. The end. All right. Well, I hope you liked that one. As I say, it was inspired by my own haircut this week. Okay, well, we'll leave it there for now, and until next time, goodbye. Hello, it's me again. If you enjoyed listening to Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt, it would be really helpful if you could like, subscribe, follow, and or review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to now. Every little one of those digital affirmations helps, and the bigger this podcast gets, the more I can justify procrastinating from my real job to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you.